Walking in faith takes on a whole new meaning with Sock Religious. If you're looking for a perfect Catholic gift for a friend or family member, Sock Religious is the perfect place to look. Sock Religious has hundreds of saint inspired sock designs to choose from that will help you put your best foot forward in all of your daily conversations. They've also got some absolutely hilarious saint inspired t shirts that you've got to check out too, like their recent Catholic Swifties collection. It's an awesome mix of pop culture and faith based references that are so unique and fun. My favorite pair of Sock Religious socks are the Little Flower, the St. Therese ones. And it was a special joy to be able to give a pair to my daughter when she came home to visit recently because her middle name is Therese. And that saint has such special meaning for Gabby. So, Gabrielle Therese wearing her St. Therese socks. I mean, there's nothing better than that, right? And Sock Religious is excited to offer Girlfriends podcast listeners an exclusive discount if you're buying for the first time. Just use the code GIRLFRIENDS at checkout for 10% off your first purchase. Find your next pair at sockreligious.com. Girlfriends, episode number 447, How to Overcome Self-Doubt and Really Thrive. Hello and welcome to Girlfriends. I'm Danielle Bean. I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm on a mission to help you know your worth as a woman so you can find peace, balance, and joy in family living. This week, we're talking about self-doubt, a problem that all of us face from time to time, and how to overcome it and really thrive. Can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hey, girlfriend, how are you? I am so thrilled to be joining you here today on the podcast. Thank you for showing up. If you are a first-time listener to the Girlfriends podcast, I want to give you a special welcome. I hope you're going to like what we do here and want to come back for more. If you're sometimes or all the time listener to Girlfriends, welcome to you too. I'm so thrilled that we're able to connect here again. So I've got to tell you, Advent is just a few weeks away. Believe it or not, here we go. And Advent is going to go by like a flash this year because the first day of Advent is December 1st. I think this is like the latest start we can have for Advent, and we're going to feel it. It's going to feel like an all-out race toward Christmas. But do you have a plan for Advent? I would love for you to be part of our plan for Advent over at Girlfriends After Hours. So we're going to be providing over there daily content for Advent. If you don't have a plan for Advent yet, if you sometimes scramble and you're like, I don't have a book or a journal or a thing or whatever, I know there's tons of stuff offered this time of year. So I'm keeping it really simple over at Girlfriends After Hours, but I would love for you to be a part of our communal experience of Advent. And what we're going to be doing, to keep it simple, we're just going through the Gospel of Luke. So Advent is 24 days. Like I said, it begins December 1st. And the chapters of Luke happen to be 24. So we can read the Gospel of Luke together during the Advent season. So what it's going to look like is daily content over at Girlfriends After Hours, which if you're not familiar with it, this is my Substack. This is where we can go further with the podcast, where we can really connect and share in our everyday lives and share with different kinds of media, writing, audio files, different podcasts, live events, that sort of thing. So we're going to be having a live event on November 20th to kick off our Advent season to get ready for that December 1st start. And that's going to be free for everybody to participate in. I would love for you to be a part of it. We're going to be talking about some basic ways to find peace in the Advent season, and who doesn't need that? So you can get all the information to sign up for that live event, to get signed up for our daily content through Advent, which is going to be reading little snippets, little bits, little reflections on the gospel. And then you're free to read the entire chapter each day of Advent throughout the season of Advent, getting through the Gospel of Luke. And we're also going to have daily doable items. I love these little prompts toward action. They really help us to stay focused on the virtues that we want to be growing on, especially during the Advent season and reflecting on our relationship with Jesus, which is what it's all about. We're supposed to be preparing our hearts to receive Jesus. So what can that look like for you this Advent season? I would love to go through this holy season together over at Girlfriends After Hours. So get yourself over there and get signed up so that you can get access to all of that content and be a part of the growing community of girlfriends. The URL is daniellebean.substack.com. You can always go to daniellebean.com, though, and you can click over to subscribe from there. There's a free level of membership, but to get access to all of the content that we're going to be sharing during Advent, to get access to all of the live events and the upcoming challenges that we have planned through 2025, I want you to think about upgrading your membership over there. It's a way you can support what we do here at the podcast, but then also you get access to special benefits. You get access to bonus podcasts. You get access to monthly live events where we do those live Q&As, which are so fun to do, where we can talk about what's on your mind and what's going on in your heart. You can bring your questions to those Q&As. And it really is a gathering of friends. We're really getting to know each other. We would love to have you be a part of that community. So to get that upgraded access, it's $50 for a year, which is a discounted rate, or $6 for a month. It really is a small investment in yourself, in growing your spiritual life through the end of 2024 and going into 2025. You want to be part of a community? Do you enjoy what we do here at the podcast? Then you're really going to enjoy what we do beyond the podcast, getting together and sharing even more content. Again, get all the information and upgrade your membership over at daniellebean.substack.com. All right, but today we are here to talk about overcoming self-doubt. How can we really thrive when we're crippled with self-doubt? And I think many of us can relate to this topic, and many of us struggle with self-doubt. Whether you have a little nagging voice in your head that tells you that you're not good enough, or whether you're always seeking reassurance from people, or feeling insecure, or feeling like you're the only one that struggles with certain things, or looking around you and feeling like everyone else has their act together, but you can't quite seem to. If you have those kinds of self-doubt, if you're doubting your self-worth, or if you're not feeling confident in your everyday life, in your work, in your relationships, in your interactions with others, then this podcast is for you, because I really want you to know, first and foremost, that you're not alone in it. Everyone struggles with these kinds of feelings from time to time. But let's talk about first of all, maybe it helps to pinpoint why you might be feeling these particular feelings of self-doubt, especially if it's becoming more pronounced or it's something that you're especially struggling with right now. Thinking about where it comes from, I think, can be a helpful starting place when we're looking to address it. So one of the first places that we need to look when we're struggling with self-doubt is, does it come from the way that you were brought up? Whether it's your relationship with your parents, maybe relationships you had with teachers in school, relationships with friends, or your social circle while you were of school age, or your siblings. Somewhere in your upbringing, did you get the message that you weren't measuring up? And did you internalize that? Sometimes you do need to go all the way back, even if you don't want to. Maybe think about something that happened to you in first grade, or something a teacher once said to you, or something that your parents said to you, or an other influential person in your life. Did someone once undercut your self-confidence in a way that has lasting effects even into your adulthood? If that's true, now's the time to stop it. Now's the time to stop letting that thing have that power over you. So thinking back, if you can find the cause of this somewhere in maybe your childhood, or the way that you were brought up, or the way that people spoke to you as you were growing up, those things can really be foundational. It can be hard to overcome them. But a good starting place is recognizing that it comes from something like that, so that you can understand that this isn't something that you were born with. This isn't something that is necessarily true about you if you feel like you're not measuring up in some ways. All right, another cause can be it can come from ourselves, in that we want to motivate ourselves. Do you ever do this? Do you ever criticize yourself much more harshly than you would criticize anybody else on the planet? I think we all do this sometimes. Like you're like a drill sergeant with yourself. You want to show yourself tough love by never allowing yourself to enjoy an accomplishment or an achievement, and always just pointing out to yourself, or noticing the things, or highlighting the things for yourself that you should have done better, that you could have done better, that fell short. Are you like that with yourself? Do you speak to yourself with a voice that you would never use with anybody else, because it would be mean, it would be cruel, it wouldn't be fair, it wouldn't be true? Sometimes out of a fear of maybe not being hardworking enough, or being lazy, or being soft, or some core belief about ourselves, we fall into this habit of continually beating ourselves and always looking to be better, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to want to improve. It's not a bad thing to notice places where you can improve. We all have places where we can improve. But it really is about how you talk to yourself about this. It really can be crippling, because it's not helpful to just hit yourself over the head with all the things that you've done wrong, or all the ways that you still need to improve, or all the ways that you're still failing, if you're not also making progress. And that's really counter to your progress, because you're undercutting yourself and you're making yourself feel overwhelmed and possibly helpless in the face of your own flaws. I remember once I was speaking at a Catholic conference, and one of the other speakers there, who's a really well-known speaker, and he was a fantastic speaker. Afterwards, I was like, we were having lunch or something, and he was just berating himself. And he really didn't like how his talk went that morning. And he said, I made a recording of it, and I'm going to be spending this next week just going over it line by line, how I can be better. And that may or may not be a good approach for him. I'm not judging him. But at the time, I remember feeling, gosh, I would never do that. And feeling like maybe I should be doing that. I've thought more about it. And I don't believe that would be a good approach for me. I don't think going over line by line and berating yourself like that and really just focusing on all of your flaws or what you perceive as your flaws, because then again, this guy was great. He did a great job. I don't think that's helpful. It's not going to make you feel empowered. It's not going to make you feel like you can do better next time. It's going to make you feel miserable. It's going to make you feel helpless and hopeless. So do you talk to yourself in a voice like that in under the guise of trying to do a good job? Do you do that? I want you to listen to the voice that you use, to that inner voice. How do you speak to yourself? How do you speak about yourself to others? And I want you to challenge yourself to change it to a more positive approach. Okay, also, there's past experiences that can cause us to feel self-doubt. Maybe you failed. Maybe you failed in an epic way and you can't get over it with whatever it was, with a relationship, in your work, something with your kids. Maybe that's going to always make you feel like you can't be confident moving forward. But failures and setbacks, they can overwhelm us with self-doubt, but we don't have to allow them to control us like that. If we can reframe them, we can look at them as an experience where we learned something. I look back at some of my biggest failures, whether personally or professionally, things that didn't go the way that I wanted them to, things that I'm really embarrassed about, or thinking back to things that I really did wrong or things that I really messed up. And I can see how much I've learned from them. And that's really a helpful way to frame it, to put that filter on it when you're looking at your past failures. And we all have them, big and small. So looking back at your past failures, what can you learn from them? Not what can you learn from them about how to think of yourself as weak and hopeless and to doubt your ability to ever do better. So lots of us struggle to let go of those things, but just think about it. I think that's a great starting place, because being clear about where your feelings of self-doubt are coming from can then empower you to do better. And it can empower you to feel like that thing doesn't have to control me anymore. I can learn from that experience and it can make me stronger, and I can get out there and try it again. Also, the last thing that might cause your self-doubt would be fear of failure, which, duh, a lot of us have fear of failure. We're imagining the worst outcomes. We're feeling like we're not quite up to the task. But then there's also fear of success. Think about that a little bit. Sometimes we don't allow ourselves, we're afraid of succeeding at something. And that might sound stupid, but it's really not. A lot of people feel this way. You fear success because you think it may not turn out exactly the way that you think, or you might not be as happy with it as you think, or it might not be the be all end all happiness experience that you think it's going to be, whether your goal is like losing 20 pounds or getting a particular job or passing an exam. Any of these things, they're outside of us, and we can feel like they're maybe a source of happiness for us as we're working toward these goals. But there is a part of us that knows, because this is the experience of us here on earth, because we're not in heaven yet, that it's not going to make us completely happy. And there can be that kind of fear of hoping for something. Do you live in fear of hoping? That's a really important thing to examine in yourself. You might think it's luck that got you this far and it's going to fall through because you don't have the talent or you don't have the skill or whatever that to feel confident to accomplish whatever it is that you want. So those are some of the things that can cause self-doubt. But then there are different kinds of self-doubt. We've talked about some of them. One there's a popular phrase that I've heard many times, and I find it really an interesting concept to think about, is imposter syndrome. This is a fear that can be really illogical, that thinking that other people see you as a fraud or that you are a fraud. and that you're going to be discovered at some point, that you're not deserving of your accomplishments, that you've somehow gotten through on luck or chance, or you sneak through, you've managed to get married and have kids, or you've managed to graduate college and get a job, or whatever it is. And there's this kind of underlying insecurity, fear that you don't deserve it and that you haven't earned it in some capacity. And so you're a fraud. So that's imposter syndrome. The next one is self-sabotage. Now, that refers to an undermining of yourself, your values, your goals. That's a kind of self-doubt that's really destructive. And we can fall into habits of self-sabotage. When you take a step back and look at your work or look at your relationships and your approach to these things that are very important to you, do you undermine them? Do you undermine your own efforts sometimes? When we talked about procrastination earlier, I don't know, it was a couple of months ago, we did that podcast focused on procrastination. This was a part of it. This is part of how we undermine our own goals, our own values, and our own skills and abilities that we can bring to the table. And then there's an indecisiveness, which is a kind of self-doubt, because you might struggle to make a decision because you're so overwhelmed with worry that you're going to choose the wrong thing. But one thing that I find really freeing is to think about the fact that even with really important decisions, you can usually change your mind. You can undo a decision. Some of them are permanent decisions, right? Who you marry or going to a particular school or something like that. And it might be a little messy to change what school you're going to or change what job you have or what neighborhood you live in or what car you buy or whatever. But if you think about all of our experiences here on earth, there's nothing truly permanent about these decisions we make. And I find it a little bit freeing when you're riddled with self-doubt and you feel like you can't decide about something, whether it's a big thing or a small thing, whether you're overwhelmed with the choices and you're weighing the pros and cons in forever and not making a decision, to just try to make the best decision you can and then make the most of it. There is no perfect decision probably in a situation like that. And just know if it turns out to be 100% wrong, you can change it. I remember talking with a particular mom once about the decision of whether or not to homeschool her kids. And she was just so overwhelmed by the stress of making this decision. And I told her, you can just try to homeschool them. And if it doesn't work out, then you can put them back in school. And that just seemed, what? No, I can't. Yes, you can. It's a little messy, maybe. It's a little hard. But you really need to free yourself sometimes to make a difficult decision. And sometimes we riddle ourselves with self-doubt about even small decisions. And it's undermining of our own autonomy, of our own ability to do good things in the world, to do good things in our work and our relationships when we become paralyzed in the process of trying to make a decision like that. So those are some of the types of self-doubt. There might be more. Maybe you suffer from a different kind of self-doubt. You might call it something different. But let's talk about some ways that you can combat self-doubt, no matter what kind you might be facing in your life. So the first one, I've already alluded to this, is to practice compassion with yourself. So you're really holding yourself back when you have self-doubt. It comes out of the fear, perhaps, of making a mistake. But think about some mistakes that you've made. And this is sometimes a scary thing to do. You might think through this process of, what's a mistake that I've made? And how did I overcome that? How did I get through that? What were the consequences of that? What did I learn from it? That can help you to put mistakes into proper perspective. But be compassionate with yourself as you're having these thoughts, as you're having these conversations with yourself. It might sound cheesy and corny to say positive affirmations about yourself, but people really do swear by that practice of looking in the mirror and saying positive things about yourself in the morning. And if you want to attach spirituality to it, ask God to tell you the good that He sees in you, to enlighten you to what is good in you, what you're good at, what your skills and talents are. Ask Him to help you. Do this in prayer. Ask Him to help you see what your skills and abilities are and to feel confident in them. And then just really think about how you talk to yourself. If you use a voice with yourself that you would not use with a good girlfriend, you need to stop. It is destructive. It is not what God wants for you. And honestly, it's the enemy that's getting in your head. He's the one who wants you to talk to you like that. He's the one who wants to talk to you like that. He's the one who wants to frame every conversation in terms of your own lack, your own failures, your own inabilities. So use compassion when you talk to yourself. Practice mercy. Begin with yourself. You can't be merciful in the way that we're called to be with other people if you're not merciful with yourself first. And we can be merciful with ourselves and merciful with others because of the perfect mercy of God. He gives us that grace. He forgives our sins. He redeems us. He calls us to do great things in the world. He calls us to be a part of his kingdom, building his kingdom here on earth, in spite of our flaws, in spite of our limitations, in spite of all the ways that we find ourselves falling short. He calls us anyway. We're filled with doubt. We're filled with insecurity. We're fearful, but God is not. He is not discouraged. He calls you anyway. So focus on that and see if that can't change the way that you talk to yourself. And if you can't learn to practice that kind of self-compassion with yourself. Interrupt your thoughts. Rethink them. You're not a victim of them. You do get to control them. All right, the second way to combat self-doubt is to think about your past achievements, good things that you've done. And this is a really fantastic way of affirming the good things in yourself, about what you're capable of, and beginning in that place for thinking about what else you want to do. What else do you want to achieve? Living in the past can pull us away from the present moment. So I'm not saying live in the past, but look at the good things that you've done. And we all have good things that we can look back on. Even if you have to do some searching. Maybe if you're having trouble doing this, ask your husband or ask a good friend to walk you through this, help you to think of things that you've accomplished in the past, especially things that maybe going into them, you weren't sure if you could do it or that you were afraid of doing it. When I look back at things that I've done in my life, some of the most important and valuable things that I've done in my life, from getting married to the kinds of work that I've been involved in, started with me being scared, being afraid, feeling like this is a huge thing that I'm doing and I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I have the skills, and stepping into it anyway. So think back at moments like that in your life where you took a risk, where you did a thing that you weren't quite sure about and it turned out for you. And then also looking even honestly at some of the things that have fallen short. Like I said, you can learn from your mistakes. Don't dwell on the bad. Don't dwell on your inabilities, but focus on the lessons that you've learned. And that can really help you to focus on what truly matters. It can help you to focus on where you might need support, where you might need help in your life for goals that you might be setting for the future. So looking back on your past, but not staying there, can really help to reframe how you're going to look at the goals that you want to set for the future. All right, the third way to combat self-doubt is to stop comparing yourself with others. Yeah, this is such a big one. And maybe you need to do like I did and take Instagram off your phone. Where are you tempted to compare yourself with others? I found that Instagram was a place where I was really tempted to do that. You can see all the details of everybody's life on there. How do you not compare yourself to them? How do you not compare your house to them, or what you're making for dinner with them, or your kids with them, or your work with them, or your clothes with them? How do you not? And women are really good at this. We're really good. It's one of our gifts as women. It's part of our feminine genius to notice the details, to notice other people's details and their unique needs, and to find a way to meet those needs. It's a beautiful gift we're meant to be to the world, but we can use it to our detriment. I talk about this in my book, Momnipotent, where I look at some of our feminine gifts and the virtues we have as women, but how we sometimes can twist them, flip them on their head, and use them to undermine ourselves, use them to undercut our self-confidence. So if you're comparing yourself with others, look at where the source of it is. It might be social media. Yeah, that is a huge one. But there might be some people in your life or relationships in your life that bring it out in you. And maybe you need to limit the influence that those people or those relationships have in your life. Where are you taking in things that are tempting you to compare yourself with others? But another way to really combat that comparison game is to be truly present in your daily prayer life. Because I find The more we seek our identity and our worth in our relationship with God, which is where we rightly seek those things, the less we're tempted to seek it in all those other places. The more clearly we can see how empty and hollow and meaningless those other kinds of comparisons are. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you measure up against so-and-so. It matters who you are in the eyes of God. And you can come to more fully know that and understand it and believe it, not just in your head, but in your heart when you're spending time daily in prayer. I don't know exactly what that can look like for you. It's going to be different for everybody. But having that time that's set aside for quiet prayer, being still, sitting in the presence of God, asking Him to help you know who you are, asking Him to pour His grace into your heart, the less you're going to need to compare yourself with others. You won't feel so desperate to seek your identity and your self-worth in all of these other things because you'll be rooted in your identity and your self-worth where it really exists and where it really matters. Okay, then the next one, speaking of the kinds of people and influences you're allowing into your life, do you spend your time with supportive people who are encouraging of you? This is important. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You might have people in your life that you love and their family, and there's no getting rid of them, who tend to be a little bit of an Eeyore, who point out all the flaws and the negativity. Maybe they're a melancholic temperament. They can't help it. This is how they're built. That doesn't mean you have to let that be the only person that you're listening to, the only person whose thoughts and ideas you're taking in. Find people in your life that are positive, that are affirming, that are supportive of you. I find this is invaluable. And sometimes it's a little tricky to find, especially among female friendships, because we're so prone to jealousies and competition, comparisons like we were talking about. But find people in your life that are going to truly celebrate you when good things happen for you. Think about something in your life, like a good thing that has happened to you, whether it was a job promotion or your kid graduating high school or anything. What was a good thing that happened in your life? And think about the people in your life that celebrated that with you, that truly were joyful in that moment with you and positive about it and affirming about it. Those are the people that you need to be spending more time with, paying more attention to. Because there are people in your life, I'm sure, because we all have them, that will put you down, sometimes in subtle ways, that will undercut your confidence and your self-assurance. Mostly because, and if you think about this, think it all the way through, because I've noted this about some people in my life, that mostly they're doing this because they're so insecure themselves. They're telling you can't do that thing because they're afraid they can't do that thing. Or they're jealous of the fact that they know that you can do that thing. So don't let other people speaking in negative ways about you detract from your self-assurance and your confidence, especially about the things that really matter to you. You need to have confidence in your work and in your relationships. These are the important things. So spend your time with people who support you and have goodwill toward you and who can build up your confidence, especially if you're struggling. I have certain friends that I know I can text when I'm struggling with something, and they will remind me of what I can do. They will remind me of what I'm capable of. And my husband, Dan, is my number one supporter in this way. I know I can go to him. He'll be honest with me. He's not going to pretend that I can do something that he thinks I can't do. But he's so encouraging of me and so supportive of me that I know I can go there for that kind of affirmation, that kind of encouragement. So surround yourself with people like that. It might be your husband, might be your own mom, your sisters, your girlfriends, your coworkers, who can play that role in your life and make more time for those people by sacrificing time with the people who do the opposite for you. All right. Number 5, I want to remind you that you are your own biggest critic. That voice in your head that is criticizing you is the loudest one. And you're holding yourself to a higher standard than anybody outside of you probably is. I think putting that in perspective is important because we sometimes, out of a sense of insecurity, think that other people are thinking negative things about us, or we think that other people are judging us negatively. And generally speaking, they're not. They're too caught up with their own things going on to worry much about you. They're thinking about you a lot less than you think. So that inner critic that you're listening to is the loudest one. It's the biggest one. It's probably the most negative one. So put that into perspective. Sometimes we're tempted to self-criticize because we think that's what other people are doing, or we're afraid that's what other people are doing. They're judging us, and so we're judging ourselves. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that voice in your head. Pay attention to the way that you are tempted to criticize yourself and put it into proper perspective. Some of it might be true. There may be places, I'm not saying you're perfect. None of us is perfect. There may be ways that you need to improve, but make sure that it is a positive and encouraging voice. Think about if your child was struggling with something. They were struggling with a school assignment, for example, and you could see they were really trying hard with it. How would you talk to them about that thing? Even if you felt that they weren't approaching it the right way, or if you felt that they didn't have enough skills to do it, how would you talk to them about it? You would talk to them gently, lovingly, with compassion. You wouldn't be a harsh critic. You wouldn't reject them at their core. You wouldn't use that thing to judge them as less than worthy. So don't do that to yourself. Think about how you would speak to a child or somebody that you love that's going through the same thing, that's struggling with self-doubt about the same things. And know that you are your worst critic. So make sure that you're a kind one. Practice being a gentler one. All right, the next thing I want to suggest for getting over self-doubt is to sometimes, this is important, we need to consider getting professional help. It is okay. It is okay to ask for help. If self-doubt is something that is truly crippling in your life, that is not what God wants for you. That is not his plan for you. If you are overwhelmed with self-doubt, self-criticism in a way that you feel like gets in the way of the kind of relationships you want to have with others, the things that you want to accomplish in this world, the work that you want to do, if it's interfering with your happiness in a general sense, then it may be time to seek some professional help for that. There's no shame in that. We have so many resources for that. You can access a therapist or a counselor online. There are apps where you can do these things. Just begin to look for the kind of help that you might need to begin working through that. All right, the next suggestion I have for anyone who is struggling with self-doubt is to start journaling. And I am giving this advice to myself too, because I'm terrible at this. I am terrible at this. I'm a writer, so you might think that I have just millions of journals that I'm filling out every day. Not true. I don't do it. And it's something I really have a goal of doing, and it's probably going to be one of my goals for 2025, is to have a daily prayer journal where even if I just write down 2 sentences, I want to be keeping track of the things that I'm praying for, the things that are my goals in life that I'm bringing to God and asking for the grace to do, of the things that I do accomplish through God's grace. And you can't really keep track of that unless you're writing them down. You may have a super memory, but we just have this way of just moving on to the next thing. How many times have you had a really big thing that you were struggling with, a big problem in your life, and you were praying for a solution, and then you got the solution? And maybe you spent a day being grateful and just really rejoicing in the goodness of God for this good thing that happened. But how quickly did you get back to what's the next wrong thing that I can focus on? What is the next problem that I need to worry about and that I need to be bringing to God? And this is human nature. This is what we do. But it can be so helpful to start writing these things down, because then you have a place where you can go back and you can see all the good that God is doing in your life. Because ultimately, we might struggle with self-doubt because we feel like we're not up to the task, whatever it is that we want to do. And the fact is, we're not. We're not good enough. We're not up to the task. And is that a weird thing for someone to say who wrote the book titled You Are Enough? Maybe. But the fact is, we are enough in God. With God's grace, we are enough. Jesus is enough. He gives us the grace to do everything. And without God, we can do nothing. So beginning in that place and journaling these things can really help you to see where God is working in your life, the things that are improving, the things that are moving forward. I sometimes do this in an informal way, not through journaling, but just through just thinking back. Like whenever there's a change of season or something, it prompts me to think back, what was going on in our lives thinking back to what was going on in our lives, like last September, for example, what was happening in our lives, and thinking about where we are now compared to where we were then. Or maybe thinking about this at Christmas or at New Year's or this Advent season. What was going on for you last year and what's going on for you this year? And that can be a helpful way of seeing where God has truly been working in your life. How, with all of your flaws and all of your weaknesses and all of your failures, God still does good things through you. You can begin to see that if you're making a record of it. So, journaling, it's one of my goals, and I want you to consider it too. All right, the last tip I have for you, if you're struggling with self doubt, is to be skeptical. I'm going to use that word, skeptical of the thoughts that you have. Sometimes we feel like we are victims of our thoughts, but that's not true. We may not be responsible for every thought that pops into our head. Some of them are a temptation. Some of them are just habits. Some of them are complete lies, and we can control them. So we can't control the fact that a thought might pop into your head, but you can control how you respond to it, whether you believe it, whether you accept it, whether you allow it to affect your next actions in life. You get to decide that. You are the boss of your thoughts. Do you know that? Sometimes we feel like we are victims of our thoughts, but nothing could be further from the truth. You are the boss of your thoughts. So if you don't like your thinking, if your thinking is negative, that's just a bad habit. That's a bad habit you've fallen into. Interrupt yourself. And this can take practice, but you can get better at doing this. When you have a negative thought, make it so that negative thought, rather than being a trigger toward spiraling downward with self-doubt and fear of failure, make it a trigger to assess where that thought is coming from. Do you want to listen to it? Is it true? What is the consequence of embracing that thought? Do you feel paralyzed and helpless and worthless? So look at those things and really with a critical eye. You don't have to believe your thoughts. You don't have to accept them all. A lot of them are working against you, or they can be a temptation to not trust in God. They can be a temptation to ignore a call that God has placed on your heart. If you listen to those thoughts, that negativity, negative thinking is a bad mental habit. It's not what God wants for you. That is not his plan for you. I promise you that. And it can consume so much of our time, our energy. It can make us give up. It can make us feel like all of our efforts are fruitless. We can begin to despair. And guess who wants that? Not God. He's not the one who wants you to despair and feel helpless and hopeless. It's the enemy. So don't be listening to that. You can undo this bad habit of negative thinking. It takes time, it takes patience, and it takes commitment, but it starts with being aware of it. So take that first step to become more aware of your habits of thinking. All right, those are my thoughts on ways that you can overcome self-doubt. And I want to remind you, this is something that everybody struggles with. Think of the most confident person you know that maybe you're tempted to envy because she just seems to be on top of the world all the time and accomplishing so many good things and growing in virtue. She seems so holy and good, and she's doing so many good things. You might be tempted to envy somebody like that, but she also struggles with self-doubt. I'm telling you, it is true. It is part of the human experience. So don't feel like you're alone in it, and don't feel like the fact that you struggle with self-doubt means that you're not called to do great things. God is calling you. He's calling you to do great things in the world. He has big plans for your joy in your work, in your family life, in your marriage, in all of your relationships, in your community. He wants you to be working to build his kingdom here on earth. And you can't do that if you are riddled with self-doubt. So overcome it. Let me know what you think about the things that I've shared here today. And also, if you have an idea, what works for you? How do you struggle with self-doubt? And what helps you to overcome it? I would love to hear from you. You can always connect with me through email. My email is danielle@daniellebean.com, but also connect with me over at Girlfriends After Hours, which is daniellebean.substack.com. Don't forget, if you're not a member over there, I'm sorry, but you're missing out. And I don't want you to miss out, especially on our upcoming Advent content, especially our live event, which is happening November 20th, which is free and open to everybody. How to find peace in the Advent season. Get all the information so that you can get access and get signed up over there. before our Advent content starts. Again, the URL over there is daniellebean.substack.com. I would love for you to join our community there. But for now, I'm just so grateful that you've shown up here. This is so fun. I love to be able to connect through the podcast. And I'm so grateful for your presence here. Thank you so much for being part of Girlfriends. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your day and God bless your week.